So go ahead and tell us the background behind it.
Yeah, back in 2014, I was reading a Hanford Sentinel article, and it had highlighted that the Kings County area, specifically from north of Bakersfield to north of Fresno, was listed as one of the top 10 least educated nations in the or regions in the entire nation. And I was really shocked, like yourself. I was like, wow, this is where I'm from. This is the school. These are the school districts I went through. Went into and was an actual product of, and I was really surprised to see that was the case. And when I continued to read the article, it had highlighted that there's a very low attrition rate from high school age students to college from the Valley, and that's for a whole host of factors. And generally too, when somebody eventually comes from the Valley, goes to college, they don't return back to the Valley. They'll stay in the Bay Area, they'll stay in Los Angeles, they'll stay in Sacramento, they'll stay in the Silicon Valley, right? And they don't generally return. So that tends to pull the median down a little bit so that you see less and less college-educated individuals in the Valley. So I was really impacted by that, and it actually took a couple years for me to actually act on that, but I remember remembering that fact in the back of my head for a couple years, and then last year I really started to develop Inspire California. It took about a year because I essentially do this on my free time. During the day, I'm employed in the California legislature as legislative director for California State Senator Ben Wesso. So on my free time after hours and on the weekends, I've been working to develop this program. So last summer, we had our first summer college prep program, and it was a really comprehensive week-long program on Hanford West High School's campus.
And I'm going to show some photos right now. For those of you watching us on television, that's the Inspire California logo. And then we're also showing photos of the students that were involved. Look at this, a big class for the first one. How many students?
Right, so we had 30 to 35 participants throughout the week last week, and we had 12 individual mentors. Those were college-educated young professionals who agreed to volunteer their time to come back to speak to the kids as guest speakers, as group leaders, and as mentors on a one-to-one level. So we had a great composition of kids from Sierra Pacific, Hanford West, as well as Hanford High, and they ranged from freshmen to seniors.
And you told me the story of the Fresno State president, Joseph Castro, who is actually from Kings County and Hanford, right?
Right. Dr. Castro is a graduate of Hanford High. He was very supportive of the program. He actually hosted our program on the Fresno State campus. We were able to tour the campus and meet with him for an hour. Actually gave us an hour of his time, and he spoke to the kids about following their dreams and coming from the Valley. He was able to relate to them at a really interpersonal level. He was able to talk to them about the opportunities he had and the advantages and disadvantages he had growing up in the Valley, and he was able to, I think, set a really positive role model for the students in our program.
No, I think what you're doing is great, but I also want people to understand your own story. Because, like I said, coming from Hanford, and coming from our community, you were able to make it all the way to the state capitol. Tell us about your story and how you got there.
Well, obviously, coming from Hanford, a small town, rural, limited resources, there wasn't a whole lot of opportunities a lot of times for internships, to volunteer, to gain that valuable experience you need for the college application process. So, coming from Hanford, I really tried to make the best of my opportunities, interning in politics, interned for Congressman Cal Dooley. I was able to work under his district office manager, which was at the time Henry Perea. Henry Perea would eventually go on to be Assemblymember Perea. So as I grew up and as I advanced throughout my education, I eventually would go to law school in Sacramento, McGeorge School of Law, and I would reach out to Henry Perea, who was then Assemblymember Perea, to see if I could intern in the state capitol. That was really my first foray in state politics. As a brand new student, as a brand new resident to Sacramento, I didn't know where to start. So I just had my resume. I was prepared to walk throughout the Capitol, handing them out. Then I happened to see that Henry had eventually won his position in the state capitol there. So I went to his office, and he happened to remember me. So I was able to get my first free internship in the Capitol, and continued through law school, and continue to advance in the Capitol now. Again, I'm the legislative director for State Senator Ben Wesso, and we really work on impactful legislation that affects all 40 million Californians. So it's a really big responsibility, and I definitely appreciate all the opportunities that my mentors throughout my life have been able to give me.
That's so awesome, man. I really just commend you on everything that you've done, and now you're giving back, which is even better. But is it true out in Sacramento? I mean, it always looks so busy over there, like in the buildings and people running through the halls and down the stairs, up the stairs. Like, what's going on over there? You guys working hard?
Yeah, so during the actual legislative session, which will start again in January, currently we're on a recess from now until January 1st.
Okay.
We're on recess, so all the elected officials are back in their districts engaging with their constituents. But again, when we start up in January, it is very busy. It's very chaotic, as you can imagine. People are running around the halls, members needing to vote in various committees, organizations, advocates, and lobbyists, just really storming the halls. You'll see a lot of organizations bring up hundreds of people in support or opposition of specific bills.
When you have a busy day, how many meetings do you have each day? Like, I mean, I would assume that you guys have a lot of meetings and presentations, right?
Right, exactly. Again, each California state senator represents roughly 1 million people, and that, if you think about it, that is a huge area. So,
Yeah.
so can you imagine 1 million people, 1 million constituents wanting to come up, speak with the elected officials, as well as organizations, lobbyists, and advocates? So obviously the member's time is limited, so he or she will generally defer a lot of those meetings to staff. So again, we take as many, generally our day from 7:30 in the morning until we usually leave on a session day after 10, because there's so much catch up, so many meetings we have to take, so much follow up we need to do. So yeah, throughout the day, probably 10 or 11 meetings. Try to make them as impactful as we can. Limit them to 15 minutes a meeting. And try to get as much information as we can, as quickly as we can.
I know you're in town. You're going to be having a special luncheon today, but one of the main things that you want to talk about today is December the 10th. And this is December the 10th out at Hanford West High School. This is an event from 1:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. It's called Inspire California's Winter College Workshop. And once again, it's going to be held Sunday, December the 10th, Hanford West High School. How important is it for parents that are listening right now to get their kids involved in this program?
Well, thank you again for again having me on the show, and specifically really talking about this upcoming program. December 10th event, we're going to really primarily focus specifically on the college culture, promoting college culture, promoting college readiness, college preparation for freshmen, sophomores, juniors in high school. Again, it's never too early to start to plan your future post graduation and after high school. In today's global economy, you see when we look at trends at the state legislature, you see that at least a minimum 4-year college education is really now becoming the norm in today's global economy. So many employers have an abundance of people applying for jobs. Recently I heard a job in the Capitol, over 100 people applied for one position. So that's
Wow.
phenomenal. So you really, as a high school student, you really got to think of ways how you can distinguish yourself, how to make yourself valuable, how to really stand out on a resume. And that's what we try to teach in our workshops. So December 10th event, we're going to have a special guest speaker, Amanda Renteria, a Central Valley native. She was formerly Hillary Clinton's National Policy Director. She'll be coming in and speaking to the students. She currently works in Sacramento at the Department of Justice for Attorney General Javier Becerra. So she has a wealth of experience and knowledge. She's a graduate of both Harvard and Stanford.
Wow. And from Woodlake.
Yeah, and she's
Woodlake, people, come on.
Woodlake, California. So she's going to be there speaking to the students. She's going to have there's going to be an opportunity for questions and answers. Kids are going to be able to ask her questions about their high school experience and potential colleges that they're looking at. And then we're going to break into individual workshops where we're going to have, again, college-educated young professionals who are all from the Valley themselves, but they're willing to donate of their time and come back to the Central Valley to speak with the kids on a whole host of issues. After Amanda speaks on that Sunday, we're going to have workshops the rest of the day, workshops on financial aid, workshops on scholarships, how to apply for scholarships. And then for this freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, we're going to have young college-educated professionals who can relate to the students themselves, and who are going to be there, again, helping those individuals start to prepare and start to get in the mindset and college readiness
What's the most common thing you've heard while you've been doing this program from the kids? Is it like, oh, I'll never make it to Harvard, or I'll never make it to USC? I'm from Hanford, I'll never make it there. What's like one of the most common things they say? Because that's one of the things that I feel like a lot of these kids don't understand. Is like, yes, you can make it there. You just got to plan.
Yeah, exactly. And again, which something you alluded to at the beginning of the show, right? A lot of people don't know where the Central Valley is.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know the unique circumstances and the unique challenges that so many Central Valley students really face. Obviously, being removed from some of the larger metropolises throughout the state, like the greater Los Angeles area, San Francisco, San Jose, Sacramento. In those areas, you're afforded a whole host of resources, opportunities, programs. I know when I went to the state capitol, I saw a whole host of programs like, wow, these are really cool high school programs. I wish I would have had the opportunity to participate in something like that when I was in high school. So essentially, the Inspire California has been really primarily developed with, high school Aaron in mind. I think of myself, what would I have enjoyed? What opportunities would I have been really interested in? And it really goes back to, me, myself. I used my high school experience at Hanford West. Despite the fact it was a great experience, I really enjoyed the staff there. My career counselor, Ruben, he's been phenomenal throughout. Our old high school career counselor is still at Hanford West, and he's still been helping me with this program. So I just look at myself as a high school student, and I didn't apply to any of the Ivy League schools. I didn't think those were within reach for me.
Yeah, it was like out of our element. No way.
So I definitely try to tell the kids, right. If you're going to limit yourself from the outset, then you're going to be your biggest hindrance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, sometimes fear is the biggest limiting factor. It's not rejection; it's usually fear. Unless you are willing to take that step and really push yourself to the limits, you're going to already be defeated if you don't at least make the attempt. So that's one of the main things we primarily try to focus with the kids and really try to reiterate is that. You got to be your biggest advocate.
Yeah.
You got to be your biggest champion, and you got to really believe in yourself because, if you don't apply, if you're not going to take the initiative to apply like to Stanford, to Harvard, then there's a 100% chance you won't get in, right?
No,
because you didn't take that opportunity.
You didn't take the risk. Yeah.
But at least put the ball in their court. Force them to evaluate what you've submitted and actually reject you, but. Unless you take that step, you'll never know. And, at least if I hadn't taken a lot of steps in my life, I wouldn't be in the opportunity I am now to give back. But I always push myself as much as I can, as I could at the time, at least in the mindset I was in. And that's, primarily what we're trying to do with the kids. We're trying to get them to look at things in a different mindset, that their situation may not be, I think, the best in their terms, but at least in their viewpoint, but definitely look at maybe disadvantages as advantages, right?